lacrosse friends, and welcome once again to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse with Greg Beecher from Blue Squatch Productions, Adam Levy, and I. We are very excited to be back. I have had quite a morning. My wife, Carrie, has to go off to her clinical placement for nursing school. She's got about an hour and 20-minute drive, and we had 6 inches of snow overnight, so I was out clearing, and then got a good sweat going, but I had a nice face dunk. I dunked my face in ice water, and it's helped. And I decided to put on this shirt to make me think of warm and tropical climes. So I'm ready to roll. How are things in New York?
They're good. Also very sunny. We did not get 6 inches of snow here, so very happy about that. But yeah, busy in the Levi household as well. We had Preston, unfortunately, has a fever of about 100. So he's definitely going through it. Kids get sick, but other than that, we're happy. It's not as cold as it was the last couple of weeks.
How's he for doing the picks when he's got a fever? Does he just like rush through it, or?
Well, we try not to give him picks when he's not feeling great, but that'd be a good test to see if there's a correlation between how he's feeling and how he's picking.
He's going to want to power through.
Exactly.
He's a gamer. So.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the results from last week and a couple of issues we're going to address from week 9 with just 4 games, but a lot going on. We're going to pull the results up here, and you can see that Vancouver, a big win over Ottawa. The Toronto kind of crushing Calgary. There was actually a lot bigger gap until the fourth quarter, right? Mm-hmm. And then quite a game with Colorado and Rochester with another big late win, a comeback for Colorado, and Saskatchewan having a great game, the Thomas Kaisak story. So we're going to talk about some young goalies this week, and we're going to should we start with Saskatchewan, go through the Thomas Kaisak thing?
Let's do it. It was amazing.
Frank Ciliano not available because of the imminent birth of his first child. So he was off with his family, as he should be. And the backup is Thomas Kaisak, who had 4 minutes, I believe, of playing time.
Something around that. Definitely. I mean, he's only 20, but yeah, it's not a lot of playing time.
Had not played a whole lot. They tried to sign Lane Arushka for the weekend. He's been with the team. He's a Saskatchewan native, actually got his first win and his first start for the team last year. And he was not able to be signed because, and I checked with the league, Mike McClellan was great, giving me the heads up that you have to sign players. You have to send in transactions by 3 p.m. on Friday for that weekend to be impact. So if you have somebody in your practice squad, you can pull them up. They didn't have a goalie on the practice squad. They now do. They've signed Lane Rushka, but it meant Thomas Kaisak was the beginning and end of the goaltending options because Keegan Bell, a defender for the team, put on the pads because you have to have a backup goalie dressed, but he'd never even put on the pads before. The first shots he faced were in warm-up. So it was ride or die with Kaisak. He gave up 4 goals in the first 5 minutes. It did not look pretty, but he really settled in and had a great game.
Oh, it was amazing. I think when I looked up the numbers in the second half, he stopped 24 of 29 shots on goal, which against an Albany Firewolves team, which, yes, I know their offense isn't clicking the way we expected them to this year, but it's been very impressive. And he was lights out, and it was really important for him to step up when they needed him.
His save percentage was over 800 for the last 3 quarters of the game. It still wound up at 750 for the game, which is, fairly pedestrian, but he had an outstanding save percentage for the rest of the game. And he looked so good, made a bunch of big saves. They only gave up the 1 goal in the fourth quarter, but Albany had chances. He made a bunch of saves, some of them back to back. And it's always fun to see how excited a young goalie's teammates get for him. When he won, he got the water bottle shower on the turf, and he was pretty excited. And this is a guy, he's got a year of junior left with the Toronto Beaches, and he went through that whole, he's from Nepean, played with the Knights and won a Founders Cup, went to Burlington and played with the Blaze and won a Minto Cup there as the backup to Deacon Knott, who's in Philadelphia. And he's been with the Beaches, was, I believe, the goalie of the year in the OJLL.
I believe so, yeah.
Last summer, and terrific young prospect, but he played in the Arena League, and I don't know, that's a tough league for goalies. There's a lot of offensive talent. I think the defense is maybe a little bit behind, but he gave up a lot of goals in the Arena Lacrosse League. It was very little hit and miss, but he looked great in that first game and so poised to come back from those 4 goals early.
Yeah, and I mean for him to do it in his not only his first career start, but in front of those Saskatchewan Rush fans, you mentioned the word pedestrian. I would say that considering all those circumstances, when you're
Yeah.
20 years old, you got to say that's pretty impressive. And yeah, he for him to definitely bring things together in that second half when the team needed him because Albany did. They gave up a bunch of leads, but they did try and mount a few comebacks, and Kaiser said no way.
Yeah. And Kaiser, a Carlton Raven, an all-Canadian with Kufla, and a great field goalie as well. Might be a guy down the road looking at, I'm thinking, I've talked to some of the staff of Team Canada as they build their sixes program, and they're looking for, because the teams are so small, you only get like 12 guys, 11 or 12 players on a team. So Dylan Ward, Brett Dobson, clearly is going to be, one of them is going to be the starting goalie. We're pretty sure. But and actually the defender he plays in Nanaimo, Caleb Creaser, is like the third goalie for Canada in field, and he can play out. I mean, he's a runner in box, but they're always looking for a guy who can play multiple disciplines. So I don't know if Kaiser becomes involved in the sixes. I don't know, but it's interesting to see that with the Olympics coming up. He's a name to consider for that. Yep. But I mean, what a performance. We're going to move on to a team that has a pair of young goaltenders, and they didn't have a great weekend overall. Calgary losing 13-9, as we mentioned, to Toronto, and it wasn't that close. It was a bunch of goals for Calgary late. So Cam McLeod, with Christian Del Bianco out, McLeod was taken in the dispersal draft, and he's had some very good moments, but he has a .729 save percentage, 14th among the 14 starters in the NLL. They turned to Colby Bowman. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Colby has been very limited in the time that he's played. Cam McLeod has tried his best in net, obviously stepping into a very wild and chaotic situation in this unknown. As you could also say the same thing about Aiden Walsh, which we've talked about on this program. But yeah, I think that I've been impressed with every time that Bowman has stepped in, especially in this game. It really seemed like although I don't think the game was ever very close and the result was ever in question, really, I think that the times that Calgary looked like they were maybe going to play a more equal or even more dominant game was when Bowman was in the net.
Interesting with Colby Bowman. I had him as my top-ranked goalie in the draft last year, and there were actually quite a few goalies that were pretty solid draft prospects. I thought he would go after the way he'd played in Nanaimo, like basically just taking over the starting role. And I mean, he was playing there with guys like Justin Getty and Devlin Shanahan, and he just asserted himself as the top guy out there. And I thought he might be a first rounder, and he actually wound up being the third goalie picked. Nate Whittam went to Colorado at 21st in the second round. And then right after that, Callum Lever-Prera going to Georgia. And I thought Georgia there was going to take Bowman. I thought they might even take him at number 11 overall. He lasted till 33rd into the third round. I think Calgary got an absolute steal. I don't know why he dropped down there. Maybe it was just, different people see things different ways, but I thought he was the top prospect and most ready to play prospect. And I think he's showing that.
I think so too. I mean, stopping 12 of 14 shots on goal against the Toronto Rock offense that is very rejuvenated is really impressive. And we've just seen that he's not letting the opposing offenses get on runs, which I think, for a young goaltender, it shows the character and poise that they have. We were just talking about that with Thomas Kaiser, who did that against Albany. And so far, what we've seen in the National Lacrosse League, Bowman has been able to do that for the Roughnecks.
So Calgary is in Ottawa on Friday. I'm very excited. I'm going to be up having the play-by-play call for NLL Plus.
Very
Jason
exciting.
with me. I'm stoked to get up there. We've got like a ton of calls today to prepare for the game. I'm really excited for all that. And I don't know, do I ask Josh Sanderson today, who's your starting goalie?
That is, yeah, you definitely ask. You ask all the questions. Yeah, well, who knows? But you're never going to find out an answer if you don't ask. I actually just talked about this with Tom Schreiber on the Lacrosse Matrix podcast earlier this week about you miss 100 of the shots that you don't take. So
yeah. So just one point before we move on, the was it the promotion game or the plug game? You're way better than me. That was very smooth. You're like, yeah, I was just talking about Tom Schreiber on the Lacrosse Matrix podcast, which just happens to be out this week. Whereas I'm like, I'm doing the game Friday. Everyone watch. I don't think I was very subtle about it, but I'm happy. I'm excited. So
I mean, I would say that you calling a game in the National Lacrosse League is way more exciting than an episode of the Lacrosse Matrix podcast coming out. Not to downplay the Lacrosse Matrix podcast. Go check that out. Every single episode is incredible. But it is obviously a great opportunity for you, Stamper. So very excited for you.
Yeah, Shribes is a great guy. I remember we did a story on him for Inside Lacrosse magazine a few years ago, and the title was "Is Tom Schreiber the best lacrosse player in the world?" Because it was just after he really established himself in the NLL. It was obviously great in the PLL, and I was talking to him, and I told him, this is the story. Here's the question the story's based around. So the first line of the story was a direct quote. So the question is Tom Schreiber the best lacrosse player in the world? First paragraph, no. And it's a quote from Tom Schreiber. And he said, yeah, no, I don't think so. Like, I think I'm doing pretty well, but like Lyle Thompson and da-da-da. And there were lots of people who disagreed with him. I loved that opening, but it was right before the LaxCon down in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And I went down because I hadn't met a lot of the people from Inside Lacrosse that I worked with in that, right? So I went down and met with a bunch of the guys, went to LaxCon. It was really cool. And the issue was out then with Schreiber on the cover. Mm. And a couple of the IL guys were like, "Oh my God, Tom Schreiber's over there. We should. I wish we could get a picture with him with the cover." I was like, "You want a picture of Tom with the cover?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go over. I'm like, "Schreiber, like he is such a good guy, and he didn't want to do. He doesn't like the attention particularly. Such a great guy though. He came and posed, holding the cover. The two of us, holding the cover, and then just him with the cover, and it was really fun. He's such a good guy. He'd be really fun to have on the podcast. So everyone check that one out.
Yeah. And I mean, for Tom, I think I guess the case against why Tom might not be considered the greatest American right now. First of all, just as a quick side note, Joe Resetarits does not get enough credit as a top American in the National Lacrosse League or in the lacrosse world. The way he's playing in the National Lacrosse League right now. He
does in Peterborough, where he plays for the Lakers. I think they get it, but maybe across the spectrum, maybe he doesn't. He's
I mean, he's only, I think, if he's on pace to go way above 100 points this year, and he'd only be like the 7th or 8th player in NLL history to have 4 or more 100-point seasons.
Yeah.
So
and it's interesting because every time Tom Schreiber gets 100 points, everyone's like, "Oh, he's got 100 points for this many times." The only other person who was, Joe Resetarits, who's still playing and still doing it.
Right. But the thing, and I had interrupted myself, is that, the thing with Tom that holds him back, unfortunately, is his injuries. He's only had 3 full seasons in the NLL out of 8 where he's played. So and we've seen that the last 2 years where he's missed at least 4 or 5 games to start the season.
Yeah, and one thing I've got a question for you guys. So with Brendan O'Neill, I mean, you potentially had Brendan O'Neill, sorry, the 2 top American players kind of now playing down there with Philadelphia. How much of an advantage is that for Resetarits as far as his stats going forward?
Okay, first of all, whoa. Pump the brakes on the 2 top American players. We're not discounting Tom Schreiber here. There's some other guys. O'Neill is he is good. He's going to be very good, but he's working his way up that list at this point. I don't know. I think it's more of an advantage to have Mitch Jones and Holden Catoni and Sam Leclerc has been great, but having Brendan O'Neill in that mix, I think helps all of them as well to just elevate that offense some more. Speaking of terrific American players.
100%. And I think especially for Brennan to get more Canadian exposure is just so incredibly helpful. So like the guys like Holden Catoni and Mitch Jones, of course, are definitely very helpful. And Brennan has gotten to live with Mitch as well and pick his brain. So I know that was incredibly helpful to him.
So one note, and I know we need to move on to our next segment, but I just get so fascinated by these things. You
having a good time, Stamper.
Yeah. Brendan O'Neill, the 2nd American player to go 1st overall, right? After Casey Powell in the NLL draft. Mm-hmm. And do we have the 3rd this year in CJ Kurse? I think so. I think he's right now. I think he's the guy.
Yeah. I mean, I got to speak to him yesterday because he is involved. He's one of 2 ambassadors for the City Lax initiative, the ground ball initiative. And I'm just going to get the quote up right here. And I had asked him about his interest in the National Lacrosse League. Obviously, Connor Kirst, who we've spoken about on the show, has been incredible in the National Lacrosse League, and Colin, his brother, as well, being drafted into the National Lacrosse League. When I asked CJ about his potential in the National Lacrosse League, he said he's definitely excited, and it's a big dream of his to play in the NLL, and he knows that his brothers have had some success there, and he loves playing lacrosse, and he really wants to be a full-time PLL and NLL guy, which we're seeing more and more from young lacrosse players, which is great to see.
Yeah,
I actually
make it work. Let them all play everywhere.
And I spoke to John Grant Jr. about this, and he was like, it should be mandatory to have box and even sixes skills for young kids, because if that's the way the game is headed, we have to start getting them used to it at a young age.
Yeah. I mean, June's just had crazy skills that would work anywhere in lacrosse.
Right.
And he was
at any time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think CJ, and he went up and played in Mimico with the Mountaineers a couple summers ago. Last year he played, or the year 2023, he played at the Laxstein when the U.S. put 2 teams in as part of their selection process, and then he was a clear, obvious choice to be on that U.S. team. He was one of their best players at the Worlds in Utica, where they had their breakthrough silver medal. He is a force coming in, and I know he's great in field too. He might be a guy down the road that to be in the discussion of the best player between the two that playing in both. I don't know. He's really good.
The way that the game is developing and Americans are diving into box more. I mean, we're just going to keep saying that over and over again. I mean, we haven't even talked about a guy because he's further down the road in Joey Spallina. Where does he end up in that conversation at some point? And you're just going to be having more and more names as time goes on.
And Spallina's in the 26th draft, I believe, and he's certainly a contender. That is a stocked draft. That is loaded. Right now, I don't think I have him as my number 1 in it, but he's in my top 3 for sure. And in another year, he could be the number 1 guy.
Well, I imagine, Stamper, we're getting pretty close to your way too early 2026 and 2027 NLL draft.
Yeah. I've got them. I need to pull some pictures, but I've got the lists for. It's not. I'm not doing particularly mock drafts. I mean, it kind of is, but it's more. Last year I called them intriguing prospects. It's prospects to watch this year, because you get a couple of years down the road. For like 26, 27, and 28, I'm doing the top guys on my list, so certainly the top handful. But then it's not necessarily the first 10 guys. I'm going to add a couple others that I think are just interesting that could develop. So there'll be a couple of interesting folks there. That might not be as well known. So I mean, it's not going to be a surprise that Joey Spallina is there and CJ Kirst and
before we get too far off topic, because we're 20 minutes into the review and kind of going into the draft section, that will be a segment at some point, I promise you, Josh, out there. Okay. And Stamper, I know that is a favorite of yours. It's honestly one of the things I look forward to most, because you have a way better inside look at the Canadian talent that's playing through the system. So I do appreciate that. But let's wrap up the results segment there from last week, and then we'll move on. So I'll let you guys wrap that up. Thanks.
Sure. First of all, I blame Adam for leading me down that rabbit hole.
I take the blame.
It's a great section. He is Adam Levy. We have Greg Beecher with us on Blue Squatch Productions and Inside Lacrosse. I am Stephen Stamp, and we're going to take a quick break and be back with ITWOBL Section 2. To Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. We had a moment there where I was thinking, wait, who's bringing us back in? I kind of pointed at you, Adam, but I think I was a bit late doing it, and maybe not on camera. He is Adam Levy with Greg Beecher from Blue Squatch Productions, and I am Stephen Stamp, and we are going to talk about we were just talking a bunch about Americans. Here is part of the American infusion, a couple of young face-off guys. We are going to have the Stathicus-Naso debate, and I am going to open by saying I am Team Stathicus. They're both great. They've both come in and done such a good job for their teams. I'm going to go Stathicus, but he was terrific, I thought. But here he is at the dot, And to me, one of the things that I saw was he wins a ton of faceoffs, obviously. And I was watching how many shifts he plays. And, a young guy, especially a faceoff specialist, is not going to play a ton of defensive shifts, especially when he's fairly new to it. Because anytime, you got a penalty kill, he's not out there. Anytime that you're coming out of a break, you send your top defensive unit out. And then, if there's any kind of stoppage or things, and the guys are rested, you're sending your top guys out. For Vancouver, that means Owen Grant and Reed Bowering and Brett Midsky and Ryan Dilks. I almost said Jamie Dilks. Ryan Dilks. I mean, so many Matt Peters. There's so many, right? Braden Lady. They have such a solid, deep group that he's not coming out a lot, but he is. Whenever there are a series of possessions in a row, he's coming out for a regular defensive shift. He looks completely comfortable. One of the things that really stood out to me is how he is communicating. You see when they're setting up in their D and the opposing players are coming in, he's pointing and talking to guys. You can see, and it looks to me like he's asking questions on the floor, like, do I take him? I've got this guy. You got him? And they're like, and the veterans are giving him leadership, but he is clearly looking very comfortable. He's not a liability defensively. Again, he's not going to be out there in the last minute when you pick your guys to go out, but I don't think they mind having him on the floor at all.
No, I don't think so at all. I think he hit it right, the nail on the head there. And I think that this was part of the Malosky and even, when the veterans were on that Vancouver squad where we, knew that Beers and Mitski and Dilks and those guys would be so influential to those younger guys, especially defensively. And, Malosky's going to push his guys to want to be more fearless and want to play more defense. And so you see that even in the efforts by Stathagis and in blocking a couple shots, the turnovers, I would imagine, at least on the numbers, and I know we've had debates on the numbers, I imagine, he's getting hounded probably after he picks up a loose ball and then gives up possession. And that's something that, will happen over time. The guys know how to flip the ball back to the guys on the wing or the defensive guys. But it's a very interesting battle. And when it comes to Jake Naso of the Saskatchewan Rush, I have to say I've been incredibly impressed with him. And it's great to see his development as a player. And he's had some really tough challenges, just as Stathakis has had this season. But, I remember early in the season, he basically went even with Jake Withers. I think he actually had a winning,
more win, didn't he?
Yeah. Which, I mean, to do against Jake Withers, who, not having the best season at the dot, but
partly because he had to face Jake Naso and right. Naso had such a great game, right? I mean,
yeah. But yeah, he's been great. Unfortunately, in this last game in week 9, he did go out with an injury and did not come back after the first quarter. Mike Messenger ended up taking the draws in that one. However, I have heard that it doesn't seem like it's a terrible injury, and I don't expect him to miss much time, if any time at all. So keep your eyes on that in week 10 if Naso is back. But the other thing when I was looking it up, because Naso was having such a strong start to his season, the Rush in their entire history, going back to the Edmonton days, haven't had a guy, even during the Jeremy Thompson days, that has won at this level at the dot. And so, this is kind of showing, do faceoffs really matter? Well, 5-2, you can equate some of that to possessions. I know you can give it to me a little bit, but I think, as Evan Schemenauer broke it down, once you pass that 60% mark, you are winning at a much higher clip. And clearly the Rush are doing that so far this season.
Yeah. So for one thing, I mean, Jeremy Thompson was a guy who was a good D transition player, solid guy, and took faceoffs, and he's won a lot, but he's never been a guy who won a ton of faceoffs. He's more of a timing guy too. He'll try and time the whistle. If you watch games where he's playing, he'll have 2 or 3 violations a game where he just jumps early. Because that's his thing. He's trying to time it, and it's worthwhile. It works for me. Like, you give up those 2 or 3 in exchange for having it, because he's not going to be like Jake Withers, where Jake Withers is just a beast getting after the ball. Like, if he doesn't win the clamp, which he does a lot, he will go and just battle for it and be part of getting the ball afterwards. I think Naso has been really good. I mean, he had that goal a little while ago. The one thing I did notice with Naso, even before he went out in the game, as the camera's coming across during the broadcast, and he's like standing behind the backup goalie. He's not in there in the defensive mix. It didn't seem so much. I don't think he's playing a lot of shifts, and obviously we hope that he's back quickly. I think one of the things that when it comes to the faceoffs, they become more important as more teams have face-off guys, right? Really good face-off guys, because all of a sudden it is. I mean, it used to be that, if you're facing Jake Withers, you're like, we're going to lose all the face-offs. We'll just play D. I remember talking to guys who played against Jeff Snyder, and they said after a while, when the whistle went, they just let him take the clamp. And as the whistle went, they just lift their stick up and start slashing at his stick, because you weren't going to beat him on the clamp. So you might as well just try to get the ball free. So, but as you have all these guys coming in with Naso and Stathakis, and obviously Trevor Baptiste is a great face-off guy. Justin Inacio in Calgary is really good, and he's a very good player. He could probably play in the league if he didn't take face-offs, but for sure with what he brings there, he's a value add. So when you have all these guys, all of a sudden you're not losing 60% of the face-offs. Maybe you're losing 70 or 75 if you don't have it, and then that becomes an issue, right? I mean, you don't want. That's where it does wear on your players. And
that's why. Sorry to interrupt, but that's why the Rochester Nighthawks, they went out and got Mike Sisselberger, because they admitted, like, when you're losing 20 and 25 faceoffs, and I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago, that's when it really does start to pile up, and they were getting the losses because of that. Obviously, Sisselberger has been, I believe it's the holdout list, the short-term holdout list that he's on.
Yeah, he went to the PLL 6s thing, and they were doing a camp. He was doing like a clinic or something.
Yeah, and so
you love that. I don't think we do, but
I mean, he's very deeply committed to the PLL, and I'm actually happy that he's getting some reps in the box. I'm sure he's heard from guys like Baptiste and other Americans that learning how to do it in the box game is very helpful for the field. So I'm sure that's playing a part in it.
Yeah. Guys like Sisselberger, we've seen him. He seems like one of the guys who is quite comfortable getting the ball and going to the net and making decisions. Like, one of the things, some of the guys, especially the American faceoff guys, who get the ball and then they see a lane, it's the tunnel vision can happen pretty easily, right? It's like, I have a shot at the net, I'm going in, I'm shooting. And you can see sometimes they're like, this is what's happening. Whereas Sisselberger, it looked to me like he made that one beautiful pass where he went and got the loose ball off the face-off over by the boards, ran along the boards, and drifted a little lob pass over to somebody who scored. It was gorgeous. I mean, it was really, really nice. And that is really developing a comfort level. And we've got, Joe Nardella is the other guy we haven't even mentioned, and he's one of the best face-off guys. And for fairly quickly, Albany realized, hey, he can play on defense. He'll be out there. He kills penalties. He does everything. He's out there whenever they need him. He's just part of the defensive rotation, an important part. So he may be the best of the bunch of the American faceoff guys right now in terms of all-around game.
Yeah, and we've mentioned a handful of young face-off names, but this really does feel like the next very exciting wave of face-off guys in the National Lacrosse League. We had Baptiste, Erlin, Ardella, Withers at one point, and now we've got Inacio and Stathakis and Naso and Sisselberger, and it seems very exciting. And for three of those four guys to be Americans is very exciting. But I'm glad you had mentioned Inacio, because as a Canadian and me as a pseudo-Canadian living in America now, I feel like, we got to give our Canadian face-off guys some love.
For sure. Honorary Canadian, Adam.
Yes.
And we haven't mentioned Tim Edwards, who is also, terrific American face-off guy. And now, so the thing about it is, you have a face-off guy, he may or may not be able to play a lot of defensive shifts at the time. It becomes very much a roster composition issue. You have 21 players on your active roster. You dress 19 for the game. 2 have to be goalies. You have 17 spots. Most teams go with 7 forwards. You've got 10 defenders. That's 2 full lines of 5. If you have one of those defenders that can't go out for a regular shift, it's putting a load on other players. And like I said, after a stoppage, anytime there's the commercial timeouts or media timeouts, anytime there's a quarter, you're putting your top guys out, and you can manage that load to an extent. But it is challenging to have a guy who you don't feel comfortable putting out on defense, especially for some teams that like to occasionally dress 8 forwards, 4 and 4 instead of 4 and 3. Then you've got 9 defenders, and that can get tricky, and then if you don't want to be going with 8 defenders, because it is exhausting to play defense in the NLL. That's why, and in lacrosse, that's why you have more defenders than forwards.
So Buffalo is who I think of when you talk about that. But I mean, is there other
Yes.
teams that maybe I'm missing that, I mean, so, because Farrell basically, he doesn't take, I haven't seen a single shift that he's taken other than a faceoff.
No, and Farrell, I asked John Tavares that last year in the pregame call before the one of the playoff games, and he said, I said, you know, can you afford, especially, I said, when you have the back-to-back, because they were playing in the final with Albany, the 2 games, back-to-back nights. I said, can you afford to have someone who doesn't really play shifts when you can only have so many runners and you need fresh legs? And he said, you know, for him, it took the load off of Nick Weiss or someone to take faceoffs. And Saskatchewan's a great example with Mike Messenger, where he was taking faceoffs. He's still effective, but I think it impacts almost everybody in their ability to play a complete game. For some reason, it doesn't seem to bother Jake Withers at all. He's an Iron Man. He is unbelievable. But everybody else, I mean, Joe Nardella is kind of in that class too, but I think he takes a shift here and there to get some break. But that is one to me that is a really tricky decision.
Yeah, but I think it's a great question. And I also think it brings up this kind of future discussion with the Buffalo Bandits, because, you know, they do have some veteran guys on that defensive side of the ball. You know, particularly, you mentioned Weiss, but obviously with Steve Priolo and Paul Dawson. You know, as they start to rebuild that defense, you know, are they going to change things up where they're going to need a guy, whether it's Farrell or somebody else, who can step back and play those defensive shifts? It'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah. Do they look at a guy like, spoiler alert, Bo Columbus, who's one of my prospects to watch? I don't think he's a top 10 guy, but he might be. And he's a good, solid player, plays for Coburg, Kodiaks, and MSL. He was a very, very good junior player. And I know teams have their eye on him because he is a guy who should win a lot of faceoffs and can play. So, you know, do they look for someone like that? And I think, given that Stothicus kind of came out of nowhere, Naso came out of nowhere for us watching primarily box stuff, I think there are probably some guys that are going to be the next Stothicus / Naso, right? So who are they going to be? Who knows? They're going to come out of nowhere. For us, I'm sure teams have their eyes on them and are paying attention.
Exactly.
Do you know any? Do you know any off the top of your head?
I do not know any off the top of my head.
All right. Me neither. Are we done? We're done for that section. We still have more show to come, so don't go away. We will be back on Inside the World of Box Lacrosse for Adam Levy and Greg Beecher on Blue Squatch, and Inside Lacrosse, I'm Steven Stamp, and we will be back in, I'd say, a minute and a half. Everyone grab a drink and be ready to roll.
Welcome back, everybody, to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse, ITWOBL. I'm Adam Levy, Steven Stamp, and Greg Beecher here with you for this one of the final segments of this week's episode. We're going to go into the predictions, one of the fan favorite sections of this program. So I hope you're ready and excited to see who Stamper and I are going to pick. And Stamper, I will let you kick things off with those Friday night games. Let's go Ottawa and Vancouver.
Yeah, those are last week's games, right?
Those are last week's games.
So we can see how we did we're going to see how we did last week. So
yes, let's do that.
Yeah, I had Ottawa.
I totally forgot.
No, I didn't. I had Vancouver. You had Ottawa.
I did, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I got that one. Toronto, Calgary. I think we both had Toronto.
I hope so. I think so. Yeah.
I'm sure I went with Toronto. So I remember saying I couldn't pick Toronto to go 0-6.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pick them to go 1-6 either. Colorado, Rochester. I believe you had Colorado. I had Rochester, which looked really good for me until the last few minutes. And then you got it. And then there was another game that Greg just removed. And Saskatchewan and Albany. I had Albany. That I think is fascinating because Ottawa is a good team with a great goalie. They also have arguably the best box lacrosse player, certainly one of the best, most dynamic box lacrosse players in the world, in Jeff Teat, and they have scored 9 and 4 goals the last 2 weeks.
They are actually on pace to have the 3rd worst offense in NLL history in goals per game right now. And one of the other top 4 is a New York Riptide 2020 season. So definitely hard times for that offense right now. And I was looking it up on total shots, Jeff Teat is actually shooting less than 10% this season, which you want to bring that up at least 5 or 6 percentage points at a minimum for him to be where he needs to be. But we've talked about it, and Zach Higgins has been phenomenal. I know it might be controversial. People are going to say Matt Vince, goaltender of the year. I think that my preseason pick of Zach Higgins is looking pretty good right now. So I'm excited, and I'm gonna think that things are gonna turn around for Ottawa and go with the Ottawa Black Bears.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at why I'm also going with Ottawa, because they were fairly thoroughly outplayed in terms of chances. And I thought and here is Zach Higgins and some of the saves he made. We're going to let these run as we talk about this prediction, because he was sensational. I thought the broadcast crew did a really nice job of pointing out that the way Tino Ferro was on color, and he was really saying, they were all over Jeff Teat. They're getting out, not giving him any space. And they were really overemphasizing covering him. With Riley O'Connor out, Ottawa is kind of looking for answers for how to make things work for Teat. I mean, Jeff Teat does a lot on his own. You just give him the ball and he's going to make good things happen. But you do need a team around him, as we're seeing. And Connor Kiernan has been very good. Jacob Dunbar having a great season, but as a whole, it's just not really clicking. I think they want more from Kyle Matisse. I think they want more from Larson Sundown, which has been kind of in and out. So, does Nathan Grennan get another shot? What does Eric Fennell bring? He played very well in the weekend, but I think they're going to be better. I just don't think they're going to keep scoring 4 goals a game. Obviously,
of course not.
Okay?
Actually, it was, I believe it was the fewest in franchise history, in their young franchise history. So you definitely don't expect that to continue, especially with that offense. But yeah, I mean, just to continue as the Zach Higgins highlights roll, I don't know if anyone's keeping track of acrobatic saves, but I think you hit it right on the head there, that, the type of saves that he's making. It's not just the amount of saves. I mean, there you go, right there on the break, sliding from side to side on the post. He's just such an incredible goaltender in terms of that. And we've really seen him do that throughout most of his career. But, I would say, for me, the turning point was when I got to see him a couple years ago during the Mann Cup run, the WLA season, and then, of course, against the Six Nation Chiefs a couple years ago. And, he's really, I think, been at his best over those last couple years.
Yeah, I've seen Higgy play a ton in, with Brooklyn in major series, with in the Arena Lacrosse League, winning a championship with the Oshawa Outlaws, with Calgary, his brief stint in Calgary, where he had the highest save percentage in the league in his one relief appearance, and then when he finally got a shot to start regularly in Philadelphia, and with Israel winning a European box championship and being instrumental in some of their success at the world's level. And he's been great throughout, but I think he has been at his best the last couple of years. No disrespect to Matt Vince, who's fantastic. I mean, obviously up there with Dallas Elliott in the discussion of greatest goalie of all time. But I think even though Vince has a slightly higher save percentage, just watch this highlight reel, go back and watch it again, and you'll be like, yeah, no, Zach Higgins is the goalie of the year at this point. That's our awards section for the week. Zach Higgins is the goalie of the year right now. And we'll see. There's a long way to go. But I think the interesting thing, it's funny because I gave Tino Ferro a shout out for the note he had on Jeff Teat. I also disagreed with one thing he said when he said, he said it's amazing to see the difference in style of Zach Higgins this year, where he's playing with this New York or Ottawa defense as opposed to when he was playing in Philadelphia. And I was like, it's the exact same style. This is who he is. This is the goaltender that Zach Higgins is, and the way that he's played. And I think he's just starting to get more attention. I think the big trade, when they gave up so much for him, kind of shone some light on him and made people think, what the heck, is he really that good? And now they're seeing he's really that good.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you just have that Ottawa offense clicking more and scoring more, their record would arguably be better, and then he'd be in that conversation for everybody. But it always does come back to record, and when you are 4-3, well, I think some people, they like to blame one person, and the goalie is always a good fallback, because he is the isolated guy in between the pipes. stripes.
Yeah. But I mean, they're 4-3 and we're in the late fourth quarter. So we're perfectly timing running out of highlights here. But that's what it took, was to go through all that to see all the Zach Higgins highlights. And that's why we're both taking Ottawa, right? This weekend, because I think, and we know Ottawa's going to start scoring more. They're going to have things really start to come together. But I think I've got that one, and I can't wait to go and call the game.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And yeah, definitely next week, I'm excited to hear on this show about what it was like to see him in person. And hopefully that Black Bears offense can be clicking at a higher rate.
And not to write off a Calgary team that's got,
Yep.
Curtis Dixon and Jesse King and Eli Salama and a rising Bennett Smith, a lot of things going on there. So it's not like we're thinking it's going to be an easy game, but I think we both land on Ottawa for this home game. So let's look at Vancouver and Halifax. And this is one, and I haven't really done my picks. It's funny, we talked before about process. You like to pick it as we're here. I tend to do way more ahead, like who's going to do it, and I overthink it to a ridiculous amount and still flop sometimes. So I'm going to be deciding today as we're here. Mostly, I have looked through quickly. I'm going to go Vancouver because I just really like the way they're playing. I think, Aiden Walsh has been terrific. I think he gives them probably an edge in net in this game, even though Halifax has a bit more experience there. And I just think the defense is so good. Like, you watch them and they're so good. And then Adam Charlambides is just taking off. You've got Kevin Crowley playing effectively. So much good happening for the Warriors.
Yeah, I think that this is a year, and I was thinking about it all week long, actually, where, we talk about, we went through our awards, but something that we haven't talked about, which is, I guess, hard to kind of break down a little bit, but the executive of the year, and you got to give it to someone, in my opinion, from Vancouver this season, not only with the pieces that they brought in from the coaching staff to the players and all that, but you see, and I had tweeted about it, the attendance on the rise and hitting highs since the team has moved back to Vancouver. Very exciting what has been built there. So I think that, it's an incredibly exciting time for Vancouver lacrosse. And you're seeing that with the Vancouver Warriors. Molosky really stepping up and into that role. I'm going to go Vancouver too.
You have to now because Greg already slid you over.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was sounding.
It would have been very surprising to me if you changed your mind after that whole long speech, and I'm now ready to pick Molosky as GM of the year. You had me convinced. So if you had changed your mind, I'd have been completely out of it.
Yeah, I mean, also, when you think about GM of the year, look at the amount of rookies that have really stepped up for the Warriors in that case. So it's been great. I'm going with the Warriors. And
it's funny. Everyone talked about Kurt Molosky as a coach coming to Vancouver and what a difference he would make. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. He's a great coach. I thought right from the start, he made even more impact as a GM, just pulling that team together. That was such an upgrade for them. And I think it was, giving him that control because they had a good coach in Troy Cordingley. He's a great all-time coach in the league. But I think Molosky came in and was able to say, I want to build my team the way I want it. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So let's go to Saturday. We'll start with Albany at Buffalo. And I'm not saying I'm jumping off the Albany train because I was a big believer going into the season, but they are really struggling, I think, with, Colton Watkinson, Ryan Wagner, and
John Wagner.
Justin Nishimura. Jackson Nishimura.
And John Wagner.
John Wagner. Yeah. Sorry. So all those guys out, they're having a tough time. And I'm not picking Buffalo to lose until they lose. So this is an easy pick for me.
Yeah. I mean, if it were any other team than the Buffalo Bandits, you might think a little bit differently about this one, but Buffalo at home on a Tucker Out Lymphoma Cup game with the emotions surrounding that. Obviously it's going to be an incredibly emotional game for Dyson and his family who will be in attendance for that one. And also just, as I know we're both picking Buffalo, but, and things are not going great for Albany, but we do have to talk about Dyson Williams having his best game last weekend, three goals, 3 assists, and really giving Brendan O'Neill and Adam Poitras a run for their money in terms of that Rookie of the Year conversation. So
he's right there. I think he's going to keep ascending.
Yeah. I mean, let's see what happens. And, if he can have a big game against the Buffalo Bandits and, whether they win or they don't, but he keeps them in that one, I think it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows and people are going to be like, oh, okay, that's the Dyson Williams we were expecting.
Yeah. Since you just mentioned Brendan O'Neill, let's slide to the right.
Let's do it.
Do Rochester at Philadelphia, and you can go first.
Yeah, so for me, and this is a game I am going to be at as long as Preston is healthy enough and think he doesn't need help around the house, and I'm feeling healthy. So excited to be at a lot of variables there.
Yeah.
But
We all hope you make it.
exactly. But yeah, I'm going to go with Philadelphia. I think that they're incredibly exciting right now. We talk about goaltenders. We haven't really seen the best out of Nick DeMood yet. Is this the time against a really high volume shooting team like the Nighthawks? I believe they have the most shots per game in the league. Is this the game where he really shuts them down? Rochester has been struggling offensively of late. That might help him out. It obviously is going to help the Wings, who on the other side are so strong offensively. And I think that with that home game going on there, they are one of only 3 teams left, I believe, that have a undefeated home record. Vancouver and Buffalo being the other 2. I think things are looking up for Philly right now. I'm going the Wings.
Love a couple of Levi Nuggets dropping in there. That was great. I think this is a really hard pick. Last week I noticed I picked all the teams with the lower records, with the worst winning percentages, which worked out. Hey, there were the teams I just thought were going to win that week based on how everything was going. But I thought that was a little odd when I realized it. Also, by the way, when I said, and you can pick first, it sounded so like, you go ahead. I didn't mean it like that at all. I meant,
I didn't take it that way.
But yeah, I think Philly's got a lot going on. I think Rochester's much better than their record indicates, but I also think their record might get a bit worse this weekend because I've got to go with Philly.
Yeah, and again, man, I know I've on so many different avenues I've spoken about Hutchcraft. If things had just hold on at the end there, we would be having such a different conversation, not only about him, but about this team, and it'll be interesting. Hartley had been moved up from doubtful to questionable before the last game.
Okay.
What is that going to be this week, and how much longer is he going to be out? But kudos to Hutchcraft. He's really stepped up, faced the most shots in the NLL so far this season.
One note to any of the Rochester fans I do see in their discussions, people saying, oh, we need Hartley back. We need to get a goalie, this and that. No, you have a goalie. Yeah. And don't blame Riley Hutchcraft for those late goals. I think giving Zed Williams a naked look in the slot is a bit more of an issue than Riley Hutchcraft not stopping Zed Williams' naked look in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really good decision. You would expect it from a great coach like Pat Coyle to get that extra man on the floor for that final possession to really kind of make things difficult for that Rochester defense. But yeah, I agree. I think I had tweeted out as well that, he has earned his spot as a number 1 goaltender, and it's definitely going to be an interesting decision as things go forward there.
Georgia is in Vegas. Vegas, a huge win in their last home game against San Diego and their first sellout. You've mentioned attendance a couple times. I think that's really exciting. That things at Lee's Family Forum, right, that they're playing at in Henderson. I think that's really exciting. Some great stuff happening with the organization as a whole. The win against San Diego, really good. They've got some play. I mean, Adam Poitras, we've talked about. Justin Getty had a really good game for them, and he and Landon Kells are in a real battle. And it's interesting because they've actually faced each other back in World Juniors, the IIJL World Juniors. And, I've been watching the two of them kind of develop. And I'm a huge Kells guy because I see some of the things he's done, but I think Justin Getty can be very good as well. I think you've got a real goalie battle going on there. But I'm going to take Georgia because I just think they're further along the process, obviously, of moving and fighting towards a championship.
They are for sure, but I like what I saw out of Drew Belgrave in his first appearance with the Las Vegas Desert Dogs last week.
Addition.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need. Justin Getty was great in between the pipes, and I think you're right that there's a good goaltending discussion there. But Jack Hanna, man, he is one of the best shows in the National Lacrosse League right now, and he's got the character and charisma to boot, which really makes him one of the shining stars in the National Lacrosse League right now. I'm gonna go Desert Dogs on this one. I like what I've seen from them, winning 2 of their last 3. Can they keep it going? I think that this is again a Tucker out lymphoma game with Coach Sean Williams there, obviously, and thank you to the Georgia Swarm for participating in this. I know this is the only one that they're participating in terms of the Tucker Lymphoma Out Cup, But yeah, I think especially on that night, now that I add that extra factor in, I think just as they did in Albany for Coach Williams, I think the Desert Dogs pulled this one out.
Nice. Toronto is cheering for Georgia because they have Las Vegas's first round pick.
Okay, there you go.
So that's the second of the 2 picks from the Rob Hellier trade. So, yeah, they will be cheering for Georgia. We're not cheering for anybody, but I'm picking Georgia and you're picking Las Vegas. And we go to our final game in San Diego. The Rush are traveling in. And Adam, why don't you go first?
Oh, well, we've got Toronto and
we should probably do Toronto and Colorado actually as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so which one do you want to do first? Should we do Toronto?
Let's go Toronto, Colorado.
All right,
let's do it like a little snake.
Yeah. So man, this is going to be a very interesting one. I think this could be the game of the week. The way that the Rock are looking right now. I know in my power rankings, which I'm just doing for fun on my own, I actually shot them up into 8th place after their win, and I know that Paul Tutka and Laxbag did the same thing. It's definitely interesting to see how things have really turned for them. Obviously, they're now so healthy. Mark Matthews out, which is incredibly unfortunate, but the amount that he can help that team, even without being on the floor, is immeasurable. So, oh boy, you know what? My gut, I'm just going to say Toronto, but I mean, this is really a toss-up for me because I think that Colorado has looked great. They've shown that grit and determination to come back. Pat Coyle, such a gritty, smart coach, and it's going to be so interesting. And then being it's in the Loud House, right? So I think that
they love playing there.
Yeah, it's a toss-up, but just give me Toronto. No, let's switch it over. Give me Colorado.
Wow, the flip-flop.
The flip-flop. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you really, there's a couple of places in this league where the home crowd really helps you, and I can't bet against the Loud House, right?
Have they won all their games at the Loud House this year?
I don't think so, no. But that doesn't,
I knew that was a rhetorical question.
Even as a numbers guy, I'm gonna throw the numbers aside and go.
I knew it because you dropped the Levy's Nuggets earlier.
Yeah.
So I knew that they hadn't. I really like Colorado. I'm a big fan of Pat Coyle, of Dylan Ward, Robert Hope, Warren Jeffrey, Will Malcolm. It goes on and on. I really like them. Hey, easy there, easy. I see you sliding my name around, Greg. But at the beginning of the season, I thought Toronto was going to be up around the top team in the league. I think they're getting to that. I think even without Mark Matthews, the offense is starting to click because Tom Schreiber is back and they are working. Josh Dawick is really fitting nicely into the role that he knew was going to be coming when Schreiber came. He is still such an important part of that. I think a lot of good things happening. They've got healthy on D again, like you said. I'm riding the Rock for now. And especially because you picked Toronto and then flopped, and that never goes well. It happened to me earlier in the season when I took Rochester when nobody thought Rochester was going to win, and then I got off them. So I'm going to take Toronto, maybe just because you picked them and then didn't, because I think that's
I hope my trend of flipping the flop is working, and it pays off. The flipping the flop is the new term. But yeah, and I also just wanted to give a shout out to Brian Cameron, another American rookie who's been very great for them and stepping up. So yeah, I mean, this is really, I would say that this is going to be the game of the week.
And Elijah Gash, there's another young American player who's really come on.
And actually, just quickly, it's very interesting because there was a time I'm blanking on the exact play, but there was a time last week that things got scrappy in the Toronto Calgary game, and Gash came in as kind of an enforcer to break things up, and you could see, I forget who the Calgary player was at the time, but he clinched Gash as to be like, okay, you're not going to get in a fight with me. I'm just going to hold you as tight as I can and make sure that nothing gets out of hand here. But
100%. That was amazing. I remember the play because he was fighting with somebody else and Gash came in, and as soon as he did, he tried to put him in his guard. It was like he was a jiu-jitsu guy. He's like, get in here.
What was the one? There was the one play last weekend where something was building up. There's a bit of a scuffle, and one guy went and it was so funny. One guy from one team went and put his arm around somebody from another team and kind of held him and grabbed another guy from another team. And they're just all there. He's like, hey, having a chat. It was so friendly. I thought it was friendly. And and they're just chatting away. And I thought, that is wonderful.
I believe that was the one Justin Martin was involved in.
Don't necessarily have any animosity.
That was a little scrap Justin Martin was involved in. I think he's too nice of a guy to really get carried away, so he just kind of put his hands out on each side and was like, all right, guys.
Actually, I couldn't remember the one. There might have been another one, but yeah. So we are divided. How are we doing so far? We're both on Vancouver. We're both on Ottawa. We're both on Buffalo. We're both on Philly. So it's nice that we've got some different picks in the desert and in the Loud House. Where will we land in San Diego? We'll be getting to that right after the break. No, I'm kidding. We're going to go right now. But we were trying to build up some suspense here. Adam Levy, you have the first pick, I think, or no, you picked first. You want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. All right. San Diego hardly ever gets below 500, right? Are they going to go another game below 500? It seems unlikely. They've got a roster that's really built, but I went against Saskatchewan last week, and I thought before the season they were going to be very good. I don't know that they're going to finish at whatever. What are they? 5-2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they keep that winning percentage the whole season. That would be 10-4, and then 4 more games. That'd be like 13 wins. I don't know if they win 13 games, but I think they are very good. I think they have a goaltending controversy. Who's good at the goalie now? You go back to Chiliano, obviously, but I mean, they certainly feel pretty good about Thomas Kaisak moving forward. They've got a lot happening. I'm going to go with Saskatchewan this week.
Yeah, and I believe I'm just trying to look over the numbers here to provide our viewers and listeners with more Levy nuggets. This would be the first time since the San Diego inaugural season that they would be multiple games under 500. So definitely does not happen often and has not happened in a handful of years. So it would be unprecedented almost to speak, but
so the question is, does Levy, the numbers guy, go against the numbers? San Diego doesn't go below 500.
Again, and I don't know what it is. Maybe there was something in the water this morning that I was drinking, but I am going to go against the numbers, and I'm going to go with my gut and say the Saskatchewan Rush win this one and move to 6-2. I think that it always comes down to I love the numbers and I will always rely on them, but I need to be consistent. I always need to deliver, and I have over and over again said Saskatchewan and Colorado have been those improved teams that I've been impressed with, and I'm going to keep riding that until they let me down, and so far they haven't really let me down too much. So I'm going to say Saskatchewan in this one, although I hope a great crowd shows up in San Diego. It'll be nice. They've had some pretty decent, exciting crowds for that one. It seems like the Rush could hopefully, when they get their next couple home games, as the weather starts to warm up, they get that kind of percentage of crowd back like we used to see back in the day. But I'm going Saskatchewan.
Okay, so we will see how things run with a few different picks. We've got a couple of games that are different, but we're mostly on board. We're going to check with the municipal water system in New York and see what has gotten into the water to make Adam Levy, the numbers guy, go against the numbers. But I mean, I think you gave a pretty good explanation of it there, but we're going to check. We're just going to check the water, make sure that they're not messing with you, because everyone wants to take Levy down now. You're at the top of the heap, man. They're coming for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's exciting when I shake things up a little bit. I think it keeps everybody on their toes. I had someone say to me recently that numbers can dumb things down a little bit. So it's nice to kind of do something a little different.
I think that's about it. I think we're going to wrap up right there because we've been going for a while. Great show. Thanks. I just wanted to say thanks to Greg Beecher for suggesting this and for making it happen and for doing all the hard work behind the scenes. We do our prep and we come on and talk, and then you go off and do whatever it is you do that makes everything go great. And so check us out on Blue Squatch YouTube. We'll be appearing on Inside Lacrosse every week as well, so you can get to the embed there. And I think it's been a great show, and it's so much fun to do every week. And it's funny because I find it helps to kind of focus where we're thinking, because we both do so much with the National Lacrosse League. I think it helps to guide, like, focus and narrow things in, like what we're doing for this and our other trajectories, our other trails that we follow in the league as well.
100%. And yeah, Greg, this is an incredible thing that you push Stamper and I to say, hey, I think we could do this weekly. And I think it's great. I knew that we both had it in us, and we've done our podcasts and all the things on a weekly basis before, but in a video format as well, and the work that you put in, it's awesome. I think this is really cool. And thank you also to Inside Lacrosse, of course, who Stamper and I both work for picking this up as well and sharing it on that platform. And I hope wherever you're watching this or checking this out that you're enjoying the show as much as we are.
Absolutely. And thank you guys so much for doing it. I really appreciate it. We did have one question, though. Who do you guys think Vegas is going to start? I mean, do you think they go with Getty? I mean, we didn't really get a clear answer. You kind of talked about the problem, but that was our viewer question of the week, I'll say.
Adam?
I think that they're going to go to Kells. I think that, I think that he is their number one. I don't think that necessarily changes based on the last game. I just think simply out of that, unless he's, going to have another really, subpar performance for him where things aren't going well, I think that they stick with their number one guy.
I think you can tell from my reaction that I think they ride the hot hand. I'm a huge Kells fan. I think he's still got a great long-term future, but right now, I think if I'm coaching that team and I feel that way about Justin Kells, I'm going with Landon Kells, sorry. Landon Getty and Justin Kells. But I am a big Kells fan, but I'm going with Justin Getty after what he did last week. And I'm riding that hot hand and try to get that 3 wins in 4 games that they've never had before.
Yeah, and I have to say, Landon Getty would be an incredible name. Let's get a lacrosse player named Landon Getty. Yeah.
I love it. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in this week. But these really complement. Make sure you go to IL Indoor, read the articles, the 3 up, 3 down, the musings, the 5 things we learned, and you can also comment on the bottom of that, and that'll give us some ideas for what you guys want us to talk about. So don't be afraid to sign into IL Indoor and comment. I seem to be one of the main commenters on the bottom. I'm hoping we're going to start something here because I'd like to. My favorite part about reading the article is usually I get to talk with you guys after. So I'm like, well, you said this. Is this really what you meant, or did I not understand it? So I really do appreciate it and hope everybody goes there and kind of compliments this show.
I feel like we need to have a group hug after all this.
Virtual group hug, guys.
Yay.
Adam,
there we go. Now I feel better.
That's a good one. Hey.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll do it again next week. Thank you.